saya pada hari ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, selamat siang kawan-kawan sekalian. Jadi pada hari ini kita akan melakukan satu kuliah umum sebagai kuliah pengganti dari kuliah politik dan masyarakat yang biasa kita lakukan pada hari Kamis. Tapi hari ini kita ada tamu yang sangat spesial. Yang ini temanya sangat dekat dengan topik kita sebelumnya. So I will do it in English, so Roberto can also understand what I'm saying about. So today, we will have a public lecture with Roberto about the Democratic Deconsolidation. This topic is really interesting right now, especially considering that last week we talked about types of regimes and governments, and also about the several subsystems of democracy, and also the authoritarian regimes. And so, before we talk about today's topic, I would allow probably Professor Foa, our Vice Dean, to officially open our public lecture today. And yeah, without further ado, please welcome Professor Foa.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang mahasiswa semua ya, yang saya hormati Ibu Inayati selaku manajer riset, Pak Wisnu selaku koordinator International Office, Mas Reza yang sudah jadi moderator, ada juga Mbak Desi dari Risku Riset dan Publikasi, kemudian Mbak Ikai ya yang di pengembangan dari Departemen Administrasi Niaga. Nah, mahasiswaku yang tercinta, kerja keras dari tim ya di UI untuk menghadirkan profesor maupun para dosen-dosen dari luar negeri dalam satu rangkaian. Kalau kalian lihat dari sebelumnya hari Senin itu kita mulai dari CAS PGS International Conference sampai berturut-turut, kemudian ada umum. Ini luar biasa. Tepuk tangan dulu buat panitia. Thank you Roberto Foa yang sudah bersedia untuk visit University Indonesia ya, and give the lecture in our faculty ya. Kembali lagi ke yang tadi sudah disampaikan bahwa kalau tadi sempat ada pertanyaan, loh kok di VIA kok belajar Democratic Deconsolidation ya, kok kita belajar tentang demokrasi. Demokrasi itu adalah suatu prasyarat mutlak dalam sebuah pembangunan. Kalian bisa lihat bagaimana bahkan negara seperti Timur Tengah itu juga mengalami proses demokrasi. Nah, jadi kalau misalnya dibilang ini ilmunya nggak nyambung sama VIA, salah sama sekali. Karena apa? Kalau ketika kita bicara mengenai administrasi adalah ya produk dari politik. Kebijakan itu adalah produk dari politik. Karena itulah kita coba melihat segala sesuatu menjadi lebih makro, gitu kan ya, lebih fundamental, bukan sekedar pada tataran peraturan, regulasi maupun tadi administratif dalam arti aspek penata usaha. Sama sekali bukan seperti itu. Karena kalau kita bicara mengenai administrasi adalah proses kerjasama antara dua orang atau lebih untuk mencapai apa? Tujuan bersama. Itu kata kuncinya. Ya, baik, tanpa berpanjang lebar lagi, ya, please, Roberto, saya kembalikan dulu ke Mas Reza, ya. Sekali lagi selamat menikmati kuliah umum ini. Tolong yang di belakang maupun adik-adik semua, pertama handphonenya di silent ya. Kita kedatangan tamu dari universitas yang yang bergengsi ini, ini dari Melbourne University. Tunjukkan kelas kalian ya sebagai mahasiswa UI dan tunjukkan bahwa UI memang layak untuk menjadi berkelas university. Oke? Ya. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Foa, for the welcoming we will start our session right now. So, but first of all, I would like to introduce our guests today. This is Dr. Roberto Foa. Dr. Roberto Stefan Foa is currently a lecturer in political science at the University of Melbourne, Australia. Yeah, and he completed his PhD just several months ago, right? Last year in at Harvard University. And his research interest deals with several types of topics, including the quality of government, democratic transition, comparative social indicators, social trust, and patterns of global civil society. So today, as I said earlier, so we will talk about the topic of democratic deconsolidation. This is really interesting because usually many people talk about democratic consolidation, but today his topic is about democratic deconsolidation. Then probably this is the time for us to learn from him, and I will allow Roberto to talk about 1 hour to share his slides. But please, if you have any question also during his lecture, you can raise your hand and directly ask your question if it's necessary. Otherwise, then if you think there's no question also during his lecture, then I will allow you as well the 30 minutes times also to give your questions and have a more discussion about the topic. Okay, then without further ado, then please, Roberto, the time is yours. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, thanks very much for the introduction and the opportunity to say thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's a great pleasure to be here in Tunisia, to be here in Jakarta, and to be here especially at UI. I'm very, very impressed by the campus, the presentation, and everything that goes on. Okay, good, okay. All right, well, I'll say that again. So pleasure to be here and at UI, and very impressed by the campus, the people we have here, and it's a great honour and a pleasure to be a visitor for this week here. Okay, so the title of my talk today is Democratic Deconsolidation, and the broad topic is the state of democracy across the world. But I would really like to use this 60 minutes as an opportunity for a somewhat broader reflection about how political scientists see the world today compared to how political scientists saw the world in the past, would have seen the world, say, 2 or 3 decades ago. So if we cast our minds back to how things used to be in the 1990s, how did political scientists see the world, and what were the challenges that they saw for discipline going forward? Well, one thing that is very striking when we cast our minds back to the 1990s is really just what kind of incredible optimism that it was. If you think about what was going on in the world back then, you had the end of apartheid in South Africa, and the formation of a new democracy emerging at the tip of sub-Saharan Africa, overcoming the racial divisions of the past. You had the Israeli-Palestinian peace accords signed at Oslo, and the prospect of peace in the Middle East after so many decades of conflict. You had, of course, the end of the Cold War, the birth of the European Union, and the prospect that the European Union would not just be a model of interstate governance in Europe, but would provide an example to other regions around the world, in Latin America, Mercosur, here in Asia, organizations like ASEAN, and then eventually regional collaborative governance might lead the way to a new global order of global multilateralism. And of course, big trend, which I'm sure you've talked about already, seminars, is the spread of democracy. So we chart democracies across the world in 1989. You see very, very few countries in the world considered fully liberal democratic, at least as rated here by the policy series. But one decade later, liberal democracy as a form of government had spread to most of the world, and of course had also spread to this country, and spread to Indonesia. So how did people think about the world in the 1990s? One of the framing ideas that was either explicit or implicit was this notion of the end of history. That is to say that the transition to liberal democracy that had occurred in the 70s and 80s, early 1990s, was not something transitory, but reflected a kind of final ideological evolution of political systems across the world. That, in the words of Francis Fukuyama, the triumph of the Western idea of liberal democracy, evident first of all in the total exhaustion of viable systemic alternative to Western liberalism, reflects not just the end of the Cold War or the passing of a particular period of history, but the end of history as such. That is the end point of mankind's ideological evolution and universalization of Western liberal democracy as the final form of government. If we unpack this notion of the end of history a little bit further, Francis Fukuyama, when he got around to write his book, The End of History and the Last Man, he sort of unpacked this into a couple of sub-hypotheses as to why the transition to global liberal democracy might represent a kind of last phase in human history. And really there's sort of two sub-hypotheses. The first is that countries who are adopting liberal democracy out of a desire for economic prosperity. Alternative models such as authoritarian fascism or communism have been discredited as models of achieving modernization, achieving economic development, and therefore the exhaustion of alternatives meant that countries around the world would simply adopt both Western models of liberal democracy and Western models of market regulation, free market capitalism, as their final set of political and institutional forms. And secondly, Fukuyama argued that countries adopt democracy not just for economic reasons, but also because democracy provides individuals with a sense of recognition. And that kind of universal desire for recognition is only adequately addressed through a democratic system of governance. And for that reason, non-democratic systems of governance, authoritarian systems of governance, will always be more brittle, will always be more prone to breakdown, will always generate greater levels of social resistance, and eventually collapse. So these were like sort of two assumptions that underlay this notion of the end of history. And the question I think many people ask today is, do these two assumptions still hold? Do people around the world still see liberal democracy and liberal democratic systems of governance as a necessary prerequisite to achieving economic and social modernization? And are democracies informed as well in terms of people's sense of satisfaction and a sense of recognition that we get from the political system? So, those are two questions that political scientists are asking today. But in the 1990s, this notion of the end of history gave rise to a whole series of kind of sub-literatures. So, the first was the literature on democratic consolidation. The assumption was that countries that had transitioned to democracy, like Indonesia, were all on a kind of path to which democratic institutions would become more deeply embedded throughout society as a whole. And therefore, this literature on democratic consolidation was an attempt to try and understand how countries are moving along that process, how deeply ingrained liberal norms have become. Secondly, literature on civil society. That is to say, the literature that moved from democratic transition to quality of democracy, understanding how our citizens get involved, how democratic institutions working in different countries. And thirdly, a literature on globalization. And that was very much with the frame of understanding how systems move beyond particularistic national identities towards something more like a global sense of citizenship that might underlie global political integration, regional integration, and multilateral institutions. So if we fast forward to today, many of those assumptions that political scientists had in the 1990s about what our world today would look like have been proven false thus far. So, first of all, liberal democratic governments do not spread to the entire world as it was expected to. There's a whole subliterature about authoritarian resilience. Started about 15 to 20 years ago, scholars started writing about authoritarian resilience. The notion of particular countries, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, non-democratic institutions have persisted and have not led to a transition to liberal democracy as they were expected to do. Secondly, there is a literature. One thing that has been sort of a disappointment is the failure of transition. That is to say that the democratic consolidation literature has led us to expect that once countries had adequate democratic transition, such as Russia, for example, that they would move very gradually towards the Western middle democratic model of governance. But in many, many parts of the world, democratic transition has stalled, and countries have become sort of trapped in transition. Free and fair elections and respect for civil liberties have not been fully instantiated. And you have countries that are considered, therefore, hybrid regimes that are maybe electoral authoritarianism or competitive authoritarianism, as to say, where you do have elections, but there is also a low level of electoral integrity, or you do have opposition activists, but it's not a fair competition. Opposition activists are harassed or thrown in jail. There is not freedom of the press. So opposition movements are not freely able to express themselves or be organized. So a large number of democracies have become trapped in transition. And that is something, again, people in the 1990s were not expecting to happen. Another thing that hasn't really happened is this notion of a new world order. There was, I think, an optimistic expectation in the early 1990s that global governance institutions would become significantly consolidated. By this point in time, organizations like the United Nations or the World Bank, the IMF, other parts of the broader UN organizational family would be developed and strengthened. And across the world, people would feel like they belonged to something more like a global cosmopolitan citizen community. And again, that hasn't really happened. Regional integration is stalled in many parts of the world, and the legitimacy of international organizations like the UN is actually lower today, at least if my colleagues are opinion surveys, than it was. So many of the assumptions of this end of history viewpoint have not really borne out in the last 20 years or so. Global democratic transition, that has somewhat stalled. Liberalism is a long distant ideology, and alternatives to liberal ideology are still very widespread in the world today and have a fairly high degree of legitimacy in many parts of the world. Democracies in many parts of the world are not consolidated, and indeed many democracies have started to undergo what you might even call the process of deconsolidation, where democratic norms and rules are not respected to the degree they were before. Finally, at the international level, the notion of a kind of global cosmopolitan citizen community doesn't really seem to have emerged, and nationalism seems to be as strong today, if not a great deal stronger, than it was 20 or 30 years ago. So this leads to a whole new series of questions. These are the questions that I'm thinking about in the course of my ongoing research, and questions that I would encourage you to think about. First of all, whether we've shifted from authoritarian resilience to authoritarian resurgence. That is to say, not only have autocratic regimes survived, but many autocratic regimes in the world seem to be doing very well. These are measured by economic growth or the provision of infrastructure or the degree of legitimacy that they have among their citizens. that is to say, that not only has democracy as a system of government ceased to become more widespread across the world, but now more countries than not are actually stepping away from democracy. That will constitute a democratic decline, or perhaps recession. And the third question concerns the health of democracies, not only in transitional countries, but also in the West, which is, how do we understand rising disillusionment with democracy as a model of governance? And in particular, how do we understand the rise of anti-establishment, anti-elitist, populist movements? And could they present a threat to democratic stability, not only in but even in established democracies, such as in Europe or the United States? So I want to take this opportunity to just talk a little bit about those three research questions. First of all, are we moving from authoritarian resilience to authoritarian resurgence? I think the sort of short answer is that yes, we are. But time will tell. So, a number of authors recently started writing about authoritarian resurgence, about the thriving rather than thriving of authoritarian regimes. And that is something that we can see in the data. So if we look at measures here, you can see on the y-axis is a measure of government effectiveness of the World Bank. And it's just showing the change from the mid-1990s to the present day. So 20 years of change. And what you can see is that many prominent authoritarian regimes across the world, such as Saudi Arabia or Qatar or China, Vietnam or Iran, have all improved their scores on government effectiveness since the mid-1990s. Whereas, on the other hand, the countries shown on the right-hand side here, that's to say, countries that have transitioned to democracy, have seen a decline in government effectiveness. And that's been quite sharp, for example, in South Africa. It's been noticeable across much of Latin America. So authoritarian regimes seem to have done well, at least in the last 20 years or so. And that's something we can also visualize if we just aggregate across all regimes across the world. You can see that Arab Gulf states, East Asian democracies, have done quite well in improving state capacity as a Soviet democracies, whereas new democracies, which is the blue line in the middle, have tended to somewhat stagnate in terms of government effectiveness. Another little bit of data that I can share with you here is just a survey item showing confidence in the civil servants. And among the few countries, authoritarian regimes of which there is data, China, Belarus, and Russia since 2000 was elected, that level has gone up. People have become more confident in government. Whereas in many, many new democracies that have been surveyed repeatedly from the 1980s and 90s to the present, confidence in the civil service has actually started to decline, and it's declined quite rapidly in a number of cases. So this raises a whole series of questions that I think that scientists need to think about going forward as to why authoritarian regimes can survive something. There are some people who argue that there may be some sort of intrinsic evidence for authoritarian regimes. So China has argued that some authoritarian regimes might be more meritocratic. I tend towards the view that it's been outlined by Jack Snyder in a recent article in German Democracy. This represents something like what might be called a modernization trap. Authoritarian regimes are very responsive to concerns about civil unrest. And as there have been protests and mass demonstrations in authoritarian regimes over the last couple of decades, that has prompted leaders there to engage in governance reforms. I have a whole load of material on that, but I have to talk about one. So the second question is, are we now in a democratic recession? So is democracy becoming less widespread in the world as a system of governance? I think again the answer here is yes. So democracy spread as a system of governance very rapidly in the world in the 1980s and 1990s. Democracy spread from just 46 countries in the 1970s, as rated by Freelance. There's 60% of countries, as of a decade ago, 119 countries were considered democracies. And that trend has simply come to a halt in the last 10 to 15 years. That trend has come to a halt in the last 10 to 15 years. So there's a really fantastic report that Freedom House put out earlier this year called Populist Autocrats, Dual Threat to Global Democracy. And I strongly encourage you to read it. And they show that among a large number of countries, scores for protection of civil liberties and scores for protection of political rights, voting rights, have been in decline, and those declines have been really sharp in a number of cases. So, in Turkey, for example, there's been a really sharp decline since the early 2000s. Some members of the European Union, such as Hungary, see a large decline. Russia has seen a large decline, national rise. Countries like Venezuela have seen a large decline, continuing decline over the past 12 months. So many transitional democracies have now declined on ratings of respect for political rights and civil liberties. So that means countries are already lost in transition, and there's no reason to assume that that is necessarily a wholly wrong to say countries that fail to make democratic transition can experience a democratic or democratic backsliding, that is, say, a reversion towards more autocratic rule. I now want to say a few words about the third question, which is why is faith in democracy declining? Well, first of all, is faith in democracy? And then, why is faith in democracy declining across the world? And how does that relate to the rise in activities and Islamic movements? So if we go back to the 1990s, there was a general assumption that local cosmopolitanism would rise and we would see a steady decline in nationalism. And that sort of dominates writings about regional integration, such as writings about European identity, as well as the writing about institutions like the United Nations and the rise of political citizenship. And that kind of transition in public opinion and public attitudes really hasn't happened. So national identity is overwhelmingly remains people's strongest identity. Very, very few people across the world identify as local cosmopolitans, and the percentage hasn't gone up. And at the same time, people's affected belief in local governance institutions, regional organizations, has actually fallen in many areas of the world, while xenophobic sentiment has actually increased. So, if we look at a simple indicator here, such as people's sense of national identity, that is to say, people are asked, do you feel proud, very proud, to be Indonesian, for example? Sense of national identity has actually risen over time, rather than decline. And it's risen in some places where it really was not expected to. So, for example, in Germany or in the Netherlands, countries that were seen as being post-national societies no longer post-national societies today. People's attachment to their national identity has gone up. And it's also gone up in many other parts of the world, even in countries where it was already very hard to begin with. At the same time as national identity has increased, faith in international institutions has somewhat declined. So that's particularly the case if we look at Europe and the European Union, where the percentage of individuals who say they distrust the European Union has risen in most countries of the European Union, including places like France, for example, where that sense of distrust was very, very low back in the 1990s. Now covers a majority of citizens who say that they don't trust or they no longer trust the international institutions. I also put the United States distrust of the North American Free Trade Association. That was already very high in the 90s, but it was even higher today. And at the same time as there's lots of faith in international institutions, certainly in Western Europe, although I should say actually also most countries for which we have data, including many developing countries such as South Africa or India, there has been rising anti-government sentiment. So that sentiment, when people ask, would you reject having an immigrant as your next door neighbor, that xenophobic sentiment was not very widespread in Western society in the 1980s. It's become very widespread today. And that perhaps is not too much of a surprise when you follow the news in Western Europe and of course in the US. And we see the political consensus now. But this was a trend that we could have observed for a long time back into the past. So finally, faith in democratic governance. Where do we stand today in terms of citizens' faith in democratic institutions? And here again, I think we really do see a decline. I think it's a very real trend we find in many countries across the world. It's incredibly sharp in countries like the United States, where we can see here gathered data from the 1970s, the percentage of individuals surveyed who said they have confidence either in Congress or the light blue line is pretty important. And you can see that that's declining. So it used to be 40-50% in both cases back in the 70s. Right after the Watergate scandal, which was what we think of as being a time of great citizen distrust of the government in the US. And actually it's just continued declining since then, to the point where less than 1 in 10 Americans now say that they have faith in Congress as a political institution. And this is something that we find that in many countries and regions across the world. So when we look at a similar item about confidence in Parliament, across Western European countries, France, UK, Italy, Spain, again, very much the same trend. Since the early 1980s up until today, that sense of confidence has declined from half of the public who said that they had faith, they had confidence in democratic institutions, then to sometimes 20% or 25% today. So what is going on? Well, there is a kind of assumption in the political science literature that this declining confidence in specific democratic institutions is perhaps something not to worry about. The assumption was for a long time, we go back to the scholarship in the 1990s, that even if citizens are losing faith in a particular government, nonetheless citizens still have faith in the system as a whole. If citizens still have faith in democracy as a system, the distinction was always made between government legitimacy and regime legitimacy, so democratic regime legitimacy. But one of the things that I've questioned a little bit in my own work, and I would encourage others to question as well, is the extent to which that assumption is really true. When we started to look into the data on confidence in democracy, rather than confidence in Parliament, or confidence in presidents or individual politicians, and what we found actually was that it looks like a very similar trend occurring now both in the US and in Western Europe. The percentage of individuals democracy they have has gone up and is now something like 1/4 of Americans say that democracy is a bad and a very big increase from where it was in the 1990s, as well as a growing proportion of young Europeans. And this is something that appears to still be true when we aggregate across many different sources. So you may say, okay, well maybe that's just one survey, one item. It's very difficult to know if that's valid or generalizable. But other work is being done now, such as colleague Chris Larson, who has put together all of the different surveys where these questions have been asked. So 12 different surveys that come from 160 or so countries across the world. And aggregated all of those indicators and shown that indeed in many countries in the 1990s, citizen faith in democracy has been declining. So here you can see the United States has fallen from being one of the most enthusiastic countries for democracy in the early 1990s to about average in the global distribution today. And that is something we see across a wide number of countries as well. So if we look at one item of democratic dissatisfaction, citizens have been asked whether it would be better to have a strong leader rather than to have parliamentary elections. And that's a question that was first asked in 1995 in the World Value Surveys, and has been asked most recently in the past. It has been asked in surveys now, and has been asked in the most recent way. And what you can see is that the percentage of individuals who say yes to that say that they would prefer to have these strong leaders rather than to have institutions of democratic, political democratic process has gone up, has been really sharp in some countries perhaps they're not too surprising, like Russia or maybe South Africa is not too surprising. A number of other cases that are not surprising, countries like Korea or Taiwan, that we've always thought of as being countries that have made steady progress in democratic consolidation. What about Indonesia? So I did just before this lecture have a look into the data, and the trend for Indonesia is not quite as bad as for other transitional democracies, but it's very much a similar picture. So in most transitional democracies, what you can see is that enthusiasm for democracy tends to increase quite sharply around the time of democratic transition, and then it's sort of fallen off since then. So that's a pattern that we see, for example, in much of Central and Eastern Europe, many parts of Latin America. Indonesia is kind of interesting because Indonesian faith in democracy wasn't that high at the outset. So faith in democracy in Indonesia was kind of so-so. People were like, yeah, not bad, maybe. So why not? Why not transition to democracy? And unfortunately, what's happened is that somewhat low starting level of faith in democracy has eroded in the last 10 years. These have got to be accurate indices. It hasn't been a huge drop, but it does mean that faith in democracy in Indonesia now is somewhat below the global average. Actually, probably towards the kind of in the bottom third of countries, top of the bottom third of countries in terms of faith in democracy, faith in democratic process. But during the Q&A session, I'll have a chance to see whether that's true. Seeing from the questions that I get and the responses I get from the audience. Meanwhile, what's been going on at the same time? Well, as citizens have been losing faith in democracy and democratic processes, anti-establishment parties, movements, candidates have been rising in influence and support. So this is just a nice little chart that I pulled out of a report by a hedge fund, actually, Ray Dalio, was a hedge fund, put out this report on populism. Unfortunately, they only measured populism in the developed world. Now, I'm actually doing a project at this point in time to measure populism globally, so we can replicate this kind of thing and see how support for populist parties has changed globally over the last 40 years. But anyway, here's a really cool chart that shows support for populist parties over the last century or so in Western countries. And what you can see is that support for anti-establishment, anti-elitist, populist parties and movements have absolutely skyrocketed in the last 2 years, in particular, and indeed is at about the same level that it was in the 1920s and 30s. So populist parties and movements appear to be gaining in support. So all of this raises a whole series of questions. What is going on? In countries around the world no longer experiencing democratic transition, or at least more countries are moving away from democracy than moving towards democracy in the last decade or so. If countries that we thought were in the process of democratic consolidation are now getting stuck in the middle, are getting stuck in some form of competitive authoritarianism or hybrid regime. If people's faith in the democratic process has not been sustained from the moment of democratic transition, but now appears to have declined quite sharply, and even in developed democracies in the West, Europe, the United States, people are starting to feel unhappy about liberal democracy as a system of governance. If citizens no longer have confidence in global governance institutions, elections of liberal democracies like the European Union want to take back power from the individual to the national level. What is the explanation? What is going on? And I have to say, I have a whole series of slides on this. I wasn't planning to do that today, but I have it in my appendix. I'm just going to give you the very, very short information. So, the short version is that this is a whole new emerging research agenda, and there's really fantastic work being done right now looking at economics and dissatisfaction with democracy, for example, that is it simply in Western society is a fallout from the 2008 financial crisis, which implies that this will be something quite temporary, and as economies around the world recover, so will your faith in democracy will also recover at the same time. I think there may be some truth to that, but I fundamentally don't buy it on. Largely because the timing doesn't really work out, for one thing. The financial crisis happened 10 years ago, and populism is exploded only in the last couple of years. Secondly, because it doesn't really map the world as a whole. That's to say that many countries haven't experienced the global financial crisis, but have still seen major increase in populist movements and a sense of dissatisfaction with democratic forms of government. The second argument would look at something like the effects of globalization. And I think that there's definitely something there. Certainly, if we want to explain why anti-elitist sentiment has been rising, then I think there is a growing divide within countries between those parts of the economy that are connected to the global economy and are integrated into the global economy, other parts of countries that are left behind, and that is a basis for anti-elitist sentiment. And in particular, in developing societies, the divide that you find between a generally globalized English-speaking elite, maybe disproportionately represented by the individuals in this room, and the population as a whole, which does not share that connection to global culture, is rooted in a set of beliefs and values that are quite different, and feel legitimately feel excluded from global culture beliefs. Thirdly, cultural background. I think that in particular anti-immigration sentiment has risen as immigration has risen and the challenges of integrating migrants in the United States. And again, I think that explains, it may help a little bit to explain what it is, but it doesn't really explain why you see rising populism in other parts of the world that haven't even had anti-immigration. Rising inequality, again, a factor that I think ties together with anti-elitist sentiment and the divide between globally integrated cosmopolitan elites and the rest of the population. Anger about corruption, I think, is a very important factor. It's often overlooked. And finally, the effects of social media, the way in which new social media have made it much more difficult for democracy to deliver its original promise, which is to act as a means of bringing people together, acts as a means of creating a community space where people can achieve consensus and can achieve agreement on desired social goals, rather than lapsing into partisanship, hostility, and demonization of the other side. So I think those are all things that have to be explored, and I have sort of slides on all of those, but I really want to take this opportunity that you may have come to this lecture to learn from me, but I came to this lecture to learn from you. So I would like to take this opportunity to pause and ask you about your own experiences, whether that chart on faith in democracy in Indonesia reflects your own experience, how people in Indonesia relate to the democratic system here over the course of democratic transition, whether you see Indonesia as attractive transition or on a steady path towards democratic consolidation, and whether people in Indonesia still see democratic governance as the best means in the country to achieve long-term modernization and prosperity. So at that juncture, I'm going to take a seat, maybe we can do a little bit of Q&A, and if we have time, I have more slides that we can come back to, and I'd like to take this opportunity to do some Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Roberto. So this is very interesting that you just told us that basically the support for democracy defined over the world. And probably some of you would like to answer these questions. So what's your opinion about your support for democracy? Is it good for us? Probably someone can raise their hand and share your opinion. Anyone would like to share his or her opinion? Yeah. Okay, yeah. I can also point out that 1%, but first I would like to ask whether anyone would like to express his opinions without I'm pointing at one of you to just raise your voice. Is there anyone who would like to make some brief, so to say, and share your thoughts about whether democracy is a good thing or no one? Yeah? From this side? Okay. Yes, please. Okay.
In my mind, I'm a graduate student of public administration. So in my opinion is democratization in Indonesia is way better than we can say in Order Baru and in the Suharto regimes, where people's freedom are neglected in that regimes. But nowadays we have a lot of freedom, like freedom of speech, etc. But however, the support to the government, I think, is kind of there are a lot of opinions in the society where there are a lot of people who are supporting the government and the other side are not supporting the government. And I think it depends on the political opinion of each society. That's it.
So what's your opinion about, is it democracy a bad thing or yeah, it's good, bad?
Well, actually, it's a good thing because it gives us the freedom to do what we want, not like in the past. So I think it's a good thing.
So from 0 to 10, from 0 you really don't support it, to 10 you really support it?
First of all, I'm not a supporter of both sides, so don't think.
Why?
No. But I think it's an 8. 8 out of 10.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you. Is there any other opinion? Is there any of you think that we should think about another alternative other than democracy? Yeah? Is there anyone who would like to share their ideas? Okay, then I will facilitate your suggestions. Then so the people back there, so with the hat, blue hat, yeah, please tell us your opinion about democracy.
bagus, terutama kalau di Indonesia, soalnya dengan ada demokrasi itu masyarakat bisa mengutarakan opininya tuh kepada negara gitu. Jadi ada peran masyarakat dan juga peran dari pemerintah itu bisa bekerja sama untuk memajukan negaranya. Gitu, Mas.
So he said that democracy is a good thing because it facilitates the people to express their opinions towards the state or the government. So it can also stimulate the further progress in the country. So is there anyone who would like to voluntarily share your ideas or thoughts about this? Yeah, okay. Okay, after that, you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Tanya, and sorry for my bad English. So I haven't experienced any democratic transitions in Indonesia since I was born in the Reformation era. So it already democratic, pretty democratic after the new order. And for me, I think based on question number one, that citizen faith and democratic is still quite hot in Indonesia because it's still strong as ever that everyone in Indonesia can still freely talk on having a freedom of speech in social media since 2000. And but I think nowadays it's like government have to come back to the past era that they start to I don't know, to stop or to having a border of freedom of speech that about the demonstrations or like blocking any other hate speech in social media. So I think it's like backward to the past era. And for the second question, for me that people or specifically the academical people, I mean the scholars in Indonesia still see that democratic governance is still the best, but for me it's not the best. For me it's not like it's the better one. I think Indonesia needs to have another point or another way to run their government, because I think democratic or maybe it's come from the liberalism, so I think it's not suit Indonesia well. Thank you. Okay, what you just say is basically, yeah, to some extent you can also support the indicators of freedom of speech, which is basically key indicators of democracy, but to some extent it's not that perfectly suitable with Indonesian situation. Okay, I think somebody raised his or her hands at the back. Yeah, please.
Thank you for the chance. My name is Amin Bacheban. I would like to share my opinion towards this democratic. We know that when our transitions from the dictatorships to democratic, it's like nothing can burden us to raise our voice. It's like we can express everything that we want. We can express anything that we want to share to everyone. But here, there is a problem that happens in Indonesia. Like, it takes many years to build a perfect democracy. Like, we know that Indonesia still have a low quality of democracy. Lots of corruptions still happens in Indonesia. Also, inadequate protections of minorities. We know that there are still lots of issues that is happening towards this democratic. So I think that Indonesia still have, I don't say Indonesia have a bad democracy, but it takes a process to be the perfect democracy in Indonesia. Thank you.
Before going back to Roberto, I will allow one of you from this side to also express your opinion. Yes? Two? Okay, I will back to you afterwards.
Good day everyone, thank you for the opportunity. I would like to express my gratitude for Mr. Robert for coming and give amazing lecture for us. So I think that Indonesia accountability is trapped here. So therefore, the democracy in Indonesia is questioned. And I've done very rapid survey, and then I get from the East Asia Forum in 2014. Indonesian democracy gets stronger but still in danger zone. So I kind of like question why it's in the danger zone, and then I found out that the reason is Indonesia accountability is trapped because there is a lot of corruption, and our personal or individual integrity is actually a question. And then I also think that in democracy in Indonesia, some of the majority rules actually marginalized and often neglected the minority. And where's the fairness in that? So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Ah, yeah. Abis ini ya? Okay, afterwards ya. Okay. So she has a questions, but probably afterwards. So what do you think about their opinions? So do you think it's supported the data that you show us as well about Indonesia?
First of all, thanks for all of your opinions, and you have the opportunity to freely express your opinions here. I would just want to say, again, this is really a learning opportunity for me. So I only really have questions, further questions. So one of the issues that came up is about whether democracy is a suitable form of government for Indonesia. And so a question I have for anyone in the audience would be, what do you think would be a more suitable model of governance, or model of democracy for Indonesia? And secondly, kind of something I want everybody to answer is, what country in the world do you think is the best model for Indonesia to follow?
Okay, it thinks that Roberto would like to know more about Indonesia. Yeah, I would say that the Indonesian situation is quite unique because probably among us there is at least Desi and me who also have an interest to conduct a study in terms of the citizen trust in government or government. And the thing is, the barometer survey always rank Indonesian government at the very top of the trust in government. But there is a very interesting finding asking the Indonesian citizen about the rate, so the perception corruption. So the rate of corruption is really high, but if you ask them, do you trust the government? Yes. So the corruption is high, but the trust is yes. So this is quite unique.
My interpretation of that is that you can really trust the government, because if you pay a bribe, you'll definitely get that permanent.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. That's what we call predicted corruption. Yeah, that's one of the thesis actually. So probably I will allow this.
Please.
So you have a question? So before I will allow you, or if you have any comment with Roberto's question, please.
Okay, good afternoon everyone. My name is Karina from Business Administration major. But first of all, I would like to say thank you, but the explanation related to Democratic Deconsolidation. And as we know that democratic is very important for one's country, because democratic allows us that there's two-way communication between the government and society. I mean, like, society may advocate about their public needs to the government. And about the explanation, I would like to ask you about there is a lost faith and democracy around in America and in Europe. And what do you think? What is the best system for long-term prosperity? because there's lost faith in democracy in many countries. Thank you.
So as I understood, she would like to hear your answer first, but you'd be the alternative then. Is it correct?
Yes, what is the best system for democracy?
Yeah, so she is asking you back. So what, in your opinion, what would be the best alternative?
Well, I mean, most countries that have become prosperous haven't had one particular type of regime through all of that time. So I think one of the big questions in modernization theory, in economics, and political science, and sociology, is the debate about sequencing. That is to say, do you need to build a strong state, a functioning administrative centralized state, before you democratize, as many Western democracies in fact did? It's the trajectory for many whole Western democracies, including Western democracies. They built a strong state and ongoing institutions and then have a democratic transition. That is the case, of course, also for countries like South Korea or Taiwan, here in Asia. Or can you build, can you do state building and build an efficient meritocratic state after democratization, with all of the problems that brings in terms of clientelism and party-based corruption? And there are countries that have done that as well. So, the United Kingdom, or to some extent, the United States, were able to do state building under democracy. And then you have other countries like Greece or Italy that still have persistent problems democratizing before they have a strong centralized state. Therefore, never until this day to overcome those deficiencies in state capacity. So, when you look across the world and you see the countries that are most prosperous, they're almost liberal democracy. So clearly, it's possible to have a high level of prosperity and a liberal democracy. In fact, that's a likely combination. But I think the big issue is about sequencing. That is a tricky question.
So, if I try to understand your answers, basically, you think that the liberal democracy is the best alternative, but we have to think about the sequence. So we have to reach certain types or a certain level of democracy.
In order for liberal democracy to be stable, certain preconditions have to be in place. You have to have programmatic politics, you have to have organized political parties, and you have to have some degree of state capacity, strong enough centralized state to be meritocratic, bureaucratic, and impartial. And if you don't have those conditions, and this is actually a whole series of slides that unfortunately I can't do today, but when you don't have those conditions, then it may simply be very difficult to have stable democracy at all. So it may not even be an option to have democracy if you don't have those conditions.
Okay, before I allow the students for raising their questions again, because this is basically, the democracy itself is an abstract concept, right? Because as you also wrote in your article, that basically the people can have an abstract allegiance for democracy, but at some times, again, several key indicators for democracy. And for the case of Indonesia, because we consists of 34 provinces, and we just recently back from one of the special region called Yogyakarta, the one that you would like to visit afterwards. It's really special because we just asked the people there, because it's totally in contrast with any other provinces, 33 provinces. It is the only province that the people would like the king himself become governor without any election. So the governor just appointed every year and year and year, and it's already been there. It's like a historical background, but the people said that, yeah, we would like to have a stable, as you said, we would like to have a stable condition at the provincial level, some of the respondents said that we have already allowed some democratic things, the elections running at the city level, municipal level, but we would like at the provincial level the king himself to run as the governor. So this is, if democracy is basically the voice of the society, then what if the society thinks that based on the democracy process that we are asking them and they think, no, we would like to have a king.
Well, I think it's, there are many monarchies in the world and democracies. So I think the key question is, do people want absolute form of democratic monarchy, or is it maybe the case that people are looking towards something more like the model that exists in the Netherlands and Sweden and of course the United Kingdom, where there is a constitutional monarchy, but whose day-to-day influence and power is fairly constrained, and you have a democratic process operating alongside that, which actually is responsible for the democratic functioning of the government. So I don't know, you have to tell me whether that's what people in Jakarta want, or whether they want to be something like Saudi Arabia, which I doubt, but I don't know. Yeah.
See, in Jakarta, for instance, they have the legislature as well. And then so, if you are asking them whether the institutions that indicates democracy is there, but the people only want the king himself to become the governor. So, I don't know, okay. If you have any question or comment about this, or probably also back to the Roberto's asking, if democracy is not really suitable for a nation case, if just like said by our friends here, what would be another alternative?
Just what is the best? What country is the best model for
Okay.
I would assume that many people might feel that country is the United States or something. I'm interested in where there's you can say whatever they like. They have to.
Okay. If you if you have to mention one country in the world that can become the perfect role model, or that is a good model for Indonesia, which country it is? Yes?
Thank you very much for your. My name is Roberto Foa. I'm from undergraduate program of business administration. I think that the country which is suitable for Indonesia to be applied is Singapore. Why Singapore? Because as we look back when the governance of Lee Kuan Yew from 65 until 94, Lee Kuan Yew also applies democracy to his people in Singapore. But he didn't just use democracy like liberally, like to make the people free for any studies like economics or education. He also uses a little bit of authoritarian aspects, because when he already thinks from the formation of Singapore in 65, because if he lets his people to walk freely without the government interfering the people, it will be chaos. Why it will be chaos? Because as you can see, Singapore is just like Indonesia. It is divided from four main nations like Chinese, Malays, Indians, and Eurasians. When you cannot integrate the people, it could be very dangerous. So he applied the two aspects from democracy and authoritarian to make the country, Singapore, is a well-known nation. As you can see, in Singapore, 60s and 70s, it's like, yes, so many slum areas until the early 80s. 50% of the Singaporean area or region is mainly built out of like slum areas, so many shanty towns in there. But he also very frustrated when he leads his people until 94. When the late 80s to the early 90s, from before he was succeeded by Chok Ok Thong, Singapore was slowly advanced. The country was slowly integrated and has formed into a well and prosperous country. I think that's my opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay, but it's clear that so Singapore is the best model for us that show a combination between democracy and authoritarian way. Because only one single party has ruled the country from the very beginnings, right? And also there is no freedom of speech and so on. Okay. Any other comment? So which country which will provide as the best model for Indonesia? Okay. The guy with the hat at the back. So the guy with the hat are the lucky people today.
Saya sama kayak Vito sih, Mas, karena Singapura merupakan tangga serumpun juga kan, jadi mungkin banyak budaya terus kesamaan politik juga, apalagi saya setuju dengan Vito karena pada zamannya Lee Kuan Yew dulu kan cuma ada satu partai politik yang menguasai, ya kan? Nah, jadi biar ini aja nggak terjadi chaos mungkin untuk menyamakan keseragaman pendapat mungkin antara komunitasnya gitu. Terima kasih, Mas.
So he has the same idea as with his colleagues that said that Singapore is the perfect model for Indonesia because the authoritarian ways of doing the country by restricting some freedom of speech, for instance, is a good trade-off to ensure that there is no chaos and there is a significant progress in the field of economics. Is there any other opinion as to which country, other than Singapore, would serve as the best or a better model also? Other than Singapore. Anyone? All of you agree Singapore is the best model for us? No? Then which country? Or no? There is no country is suitable as a role model. We should develop our own. Yeah, please.
Repeat, my name is Emily. My name is Lee. I'm from Business Administration major. From my perspective, total liberation in this country is not that suitable because of the diverse values in the country. The country is so diverse, like there are so many cultural differences between each region of the country. So for my opinion, this country, Indonesia, most of the people are just more into common interests than individual rights. And then when we talk about prosperity, we have to define what kind of prosperity do we see. Is it economy or just peace and happiness? For me, the most suitable democracy is still our democracy right now that the Indonesia has right now. But more importantly, we have to build the people, the future generation of leaders through their characters. So the education nowadays are really into character buildings. So the people for the future are really prepared for the diverse of Indonesia, because Indonesia is very unique country with so many cultural differences. So I think today the democracy is still suitable, and I think that's it. Okay, thank you.
So what you just said is basically our situations right now with the democracy is already defined. What we should also put into greater attention is about how to accommodate the diversity of Indonesia. Okay, applause for all of you. So do you have any comments as well?
Say again, thank you. It's nice thing for me. I learned from you, so thank you very much for all your good comments. So if I could ask the room, so how many people would say Singapore, if you raise your hand, like Singapore is the model for Indonesia? I know there's at least two, so are there any hands? Oh, none. They've changed their mind, so nobody's putting up their hand. Okay.
Okay. Mungkin kita, so we will do, so to say, a brief survey probably. So please raise your hand if you also agree that Singapore is the best model for Indonesia. Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So only 4 in the room. Okay, thank you. So, okay, I will ask you, who would think that the US has the best model for Indonesia right now? 1, 2, just 2 people? Okay. 3? Okay, 3 people think the US has the best model. How many of you think that Malaysia probably can play as the best model for Indonesia? Raise your hand. None of you think Malaysia is the best one. How many of you think Germany is the best model for Indonesia? One. Do you have any specific nation that you would like to ask?
How many would say Turkey?
How many of you think Turkey is the best model? No? Okay. The last question. How many of you think that Indonesia should build their own types of regimes or government? Okay, thank you very much. Give a applause to all of us. As I said, Indonesia is quite unique. So how to define the types of regimes? I don't know. It's probably a mixing between authoritarian and democracy and... Okay, I will give the floor. Do you have any other questions that would you like to press with Roberto? Yes, please. Okay, I will back to you again.
Good afternoon. My name is Dima from Fiscal Administration. First of all, I would like to thank you for coming here and giving us your quite thorough and excellent presentation about Democratic Deconsolidation. But I would like to ask a few questions. First of all, you said earlier that today there is an increase in national identity, and along with that, would you say there is also a rise or an increase in xenophobia? And regarding the anti-immigrant sentiment, do you think is it the anti-immigrant sentiment, is it due to economic reasons, or are there more profound moral or cultural problems in our society today? So there we go. Thank you.
Great, yes, thank you for that question. So why is anti-immigrant sentiment rising, and is that reflective of the more genuine xenophobic sentiment? So one of the trends that's really strange in world maps is there's a kind of divergence of tolerance. So across many countries in the world, certainly in Western societies, but also more broadly, lifestyle tolerance has increased. So if you ask people about tolerance towards divorce or abortion or taking drugs, that's actually gone up. So people have become more tolerant of kind of individualistic lifestyle choices. If you do things that only affect you, then people are tolerant of that. But at the same time, identity tolerance has gone down. So tolerance towards foreign groups, towards foreign other religious groups, other kinds of restricted identity, that kind of tolerance has declined. I think it's very much linked to globalization. I think that there are many countries in the world where dealing with ethnic diversity or dealing with religious diversity is not something people have to do. I mean, here in Indonesia, there's a way to ethnic and religious diversity. But in many countries in Western Europe, for example, quite ethnically homogenous, there just weren't these differences in cultural identity and background to deal with. So I think partly there's just a kind of challenge there that comes from integrating new groups into society, and that's something that they've successfully done. That kind of identity difference just won't exist. Generations who Germany today, or Sweden today, or Italy today, a generation now just before all is German or Swedish, regardless of their ethnic or religious background. What is driving it? So I think that the economics, I don't think that it's economics. I think partly it's an intrinsic human need to have an identity and forge identities. When there are times of change, as occurs in mass migration, people's identities just have to adapt. People have to redefine their national identity in a new way. Just as Indonesia has managed to define its national identity that goes beyond individual ethnic groups or religious groups that define this country. I do think that a factor that has been very harmful over the last 10 years, I do think that the rise of new social media is having a negative effect in exacerbating tensions. Particularly, there are many societies where there were already sort of moderate existing tensions between different groups in society, between different political factions or different ethnic or religious factions. I think that the rise of new social media, fake news and so on, it's kind of really worsened the ability to build a shared identity, to reduce connections.
Okay, I hope the answer is clear for you. Yeah? So the social media has the influence, but the economic is not the reason, according to this opinion. and you have one question. So we still have around 15 minutes left.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Ruby from Fakultas Administration. I want to ask a question beside of the citizen. What do you think about how to educate citizens to face the transition of government era? Because I think maybe most of Indonesian use the facility to demonstration is only to cheat the current government. And, so, what do you think about how to educate them? Thank you.
Could you please restate your question? So the question is how to educate people to face the transition of the government era. Because you assume that the transition will happen repetitively, then how to educate people to accept it as one. Okay.
Okay, so if I can understand the question, so it's how to educate to manage the transition to after a government has been elected, is that right?
Yeah, so because in his opinion, so the people's Indonesians commonly gather together to arrange the demonstrations against the government. And because so the government is changing, and he would like to ask you about how to educate people to be more mature in dealing with this transition between one government to another.
Yeah, and making democracy work requires more than demonstrations. That's a way of having policy influence in politics. But I do believe that getting involved in the formal institutions is very important. So obviously voting, but also getting involved in political parties and trying to build programmatic political parties. Political parties that don't just operate based on patronage or clientelism, but actually stand for a distinct set of values and have an objective for the country as a whole which to advance. So that when elections take place, there is a meaningful choice between different ideological options in the country going forward. So educating citizens, I think, to get involved in the day-to-day business of politics, and not just attending protests, but also attending protests too. I think that's very important.
Okay, in his opinion, so the political parties' involvement, so the citizens should get more involvement within the day-to-day political activities, and part of them is as a member of the political party. Okay. Okay, we still have around 10 minutes left. Is there any of you who would like to raise a question? Yes, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat sore semuanya. Saya Ahmad Nabi Salam dari Administrasi Negara ingin menanyakan berhubungan dengan isu yang sekarang bahwa demokrasi sekarang ini banyak ditentang, bahkan mengalami penolakan di beberapa negara termasuk di Indonesia. Contoh saja ada semangat atau ada gerakan untuk kembali lagi ke nilai-nilai Islam yang kita sebut misalkan khilafah. Apakah salah satunya contohnya seperti itu? Apakah demokrasi itu dapat terus bertahan? Dan bagaimana demokrasi itu menghadapi tantangan yang seperti itu? Atau mungkinkah bahwa demokrasi menganggap dinamika seperti itu hanyalah sebuah kejadian yang wajar di dalam demokrasi itu sendiri? Terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, he has a question about the dynamics in Indonesia where some of the people think democracy is no longer suitable, and which is also the same opinion probably shared by others in some countries. He would like to know whether the ideas outside democracy, for instance, just like he said as an example, so some people in Indonesia think that probably the caliphate as a good alternative. So from the perspective of democracy, do you think it is part of the process that has to be dealt with? So So as part of the democracy where the people can raise their voice freely, or how do you perceive such kind of dynamics?
Sure. Well, I think there's a really important distinction that needs to be made between democracy and liberal democracy. So, liberal democracy is a model of democratic government. So you have the core elements of the democratic process, which are regular elections, universal suffrage, some respect for basic civil rights and liberties. But some things in a liberal democracy, in a liberal model, they're taken out of democratic discussion, right? So, the elements of the United States Constitution cannot be easily overruled by Congress or by the US President, right? There are certain liberal rights, including the right of free speech, also things like the right to bear arms, which are enshrined in the Constitution as individual rights, and are therefore sort of taken out of the democratic process. Because those are liberal rights, that in a way defines a liberal democracy. So, it is possible to have alternative models of democracy, depending on what things people feel are so sacrosanct or so sacred, they should not be subject to democratic debate or discussion, right? I know that some people have suggested whether we can have a form of social democracy in which the right to food or right to housing or right to education would be just enshrined in the Constitution. And in that way, they couldn't even be that as a democratic debate, which is defined as kind of universal social rights. And indeed, some countries have that. So India, for example, actually has state rights in its constitution. They're not always honoured very well, in the sense that many citizens continue to lack respect. But nonetheless, they're enshrined in the constitution. South Africa is the same thing. So, inevitably the question comes around as to whether there is something like a model of Islamic democracy. Right? So, if you look at a country like Iran, Iran has a democratic process, has political parties, has limited political competition, but it has an extremely strong council that basically acts in a very liberal way, vetoes candidates who are seen as a threat to the Islamic revolution, cracks down on the independence of journalists or civil society organizations. They're seen as a threat to the Islamic revolution. So, that is really a definition of a hybrid regime that has elements of democracy, voting, competition, but a political system that is also quite authoritarian in many other ways, because there are these oversight institutions, guardians of the Islamic revolution, who also have control over the process. So I think that's a very that's a lively and healthy debate to have. And I'm sure that's a very lively debate today as well.
Okay. So when you just say this, basically we can perceive it as a good and healthy discussion, and then we can also give some space for the hybrid types of democracy.
I'm not an advocate of hybrid regime. All I want to say is that it's a legitimate conversation to have about whether there are different models. I gave the example of enshrining social rights in the Constitution because that's a relatively less controversial one. The idea of enshrining a constitutional right to education or housing is less controversial than trying to come up with some kind of model of religious democracy, for example. But of course, that would be incredibly controversial for somebody who's a libertarian. The idea of enshrining government provided food or welfare under the Constitution is something that would be seen as profoundly liberal, something economically very liberal. So anyway, I think there's enough healthy debate there that we have as one thing we have found in the course of this lecture is that everyone seems to agree that Indonesia has to find its own model. So,
okay. So give applause to all of us. So yeah, we still have around 5 minutes left. Is there any of you still have brief questions also to ask? Yeah? Okay, just a brief question.
My name is Yersha. Some of my friends were talking about the democracy is about the freedom of speech, and the freedom of speech is kind of like unlimited for some people with rising on. My question is, so it be limited due to the security of the country and the nation, or should it be legitimate to be the full power of the media where you can say whatever you want, even though it's going to ruin the country? And I'm talking about the populism. It's kind of moving toward on that kind of movement. Thank you.
yeah, I think the problem, the issue of freedom of speech has arisen recently, particularly with regards to hate speech, because hate speech and slander are so widespread now with social media and online. I think that the issue here is just that the laws are not caught up with technology. So it used to be the case when news stories were exclusively produced by the major newspapers and TV chains, laws on libel and slander were effective. So, if somebody put out a story that was false and was defamatory to a politician or a celebrity or some other individual, there was a legal framework in place that would stop them from doing that, that would allow some kind of redress. But for that reason, newspapers, are very careful to fact check stories, to look into it, to verify their sources. So in that way, you can trust the news. And what's happened now is that there is absolutely no fact checking or verification, and no legal redress when fake news is propagated online, even when it can be extremely hateful towards individuals. So the legal institutions haven't caught up. And the solution of and it's kind of this idea that you just need to outlaw, you need to crack down on freedom of speech. I actually don't think that it's a crack down on freedom of speech. I think it's just, we've just been, resurrecting the legal framework that we used to have for social media for actually work.
Yeah, so we think we need to end this session, but of course, so this has been a very interesting sessions we have. I have you learned a lot from these sessions, right? Okay, so I would like to thank you again, Mr. Roberto, for sharing your ideas and also your thoughts about democratic deconsolidation. So we give applause once again to Roberto. And also thank you very much for all the participants and also the students who have raised and shared your thoughts. Of course, you can ask Roberto about anything afterwards. So, and then I need to thank you, and then good afternoon, and assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.